What is it that makes Calendar Man one of the main characters that pop into my nog when I think about the Arkham games? The creep's only role in the main plot is just a cameo in Arkham Origins. I don't even think the name Calendar Man is said more than one time across the entire franchise. Yet, he somehow managed to wriggle into the minds of an entire generation of Bat fans. The knee-jerk reaction to this video's titular question is probably a resounding yes! And I agree that these games could have done a lot more with him. So much so that he's the primary antagonist in my Arkham Origins 2 fanfiction. With that said, this video is focused on breaking down what we actually got in the games. Was Calendar Man's inclusion adequate? Did it feel satisfying? With the holidays fast approaching, what better time is there to discuss the wasted potential of Calendar Man? The first time I was exposed to Calendar Man was Batman Arkham City. It's fair to say that's when most fans of a certain age met him. And that already adds a wrinkle into our little discussion. Without Rocksteady's decision to include this obscure villain to begin with, would anyone have complained about him being excluded? I somehow doubt there would have been a populist groundswell of rage had Calendar Man never shown up in the Arkham series. So, really, Rocksteady themselves are responsible for the Ouroboros we find ourselves trapped in with this discussion, fitting for this cyclical zealot. As you can imagine, when I first met Calendar Man, I was beyond perplexed. You know the drill. I stumbled upon him mumbling, 30 days has November, which I now permanently associate with him. Great! He creeped me out right away, and I spent about 15 minutes across 12 holidays listening to this man recount gruesome T-rated tales of his previous crimes to boost my precious gamer score. It's that initial investment in exposing myself to Calendar Man, not sexually, that instilled this lingering pseudo-obsession, because I had never heard of him before. I hadn't read The Long Halloween or Dark Victory by that point. He wasn't a villain from Batman the Animated Series or any of the movies. To a simple boy born in the mid-90s, Calendar Man was just a non-factor in my Batman fandom. If I had ever seen him before, he never stood out from the crowd of zany characters until this moment. And I don't think that I was the only one. As fun as his role was in The Long Halloween, the character remained relatively unused until people were once again exposed to him in Arkham City. Now, I'm not saying there's been some tremendous Calendar Man renaissance, but you can't deny his profile has been raised. After Arkham City, he's been featured in new animated forms, his comic counterpart has visually adapted to the Arkham style, and the CEO of DC Studios' brother cameoed as the character in The Suicide Squad, his first ever live-action appearance. So, what the hell am I getting at? Well, it's hard to outright say that Calendar Man was wasted potential in the Arkham franchise, when, in fact, the only reason we think that is because Calendar Man was used so well in the Arkham franchise. They are the ones who gave birth to a version of the character that was so intriguing, it made us want to see more. He was popularized to the point of morphing in other media due to this glorified Easter egg, and that's a significant achievement. But there are 2 more games in this franchise, each featuring Calendar Man, and that's where the argument of wasted potential begins to hold some weight. It's as if those behind the Arkham franchise realized how well received their version of this character was, that they began to develop a little obsession of their own. This dude showed up in every game after Arkham City. Sure, he had bit roles, but oddly significant ones. In Arkham Origins, the first mission is based around his execution. Black Mask, #ReallyTheJoker, frees him, executing Commissioner Loeb in his stead, which then sets in motion the events of that fateful Christmas Eve. But you know what's weird? Calendar Man doesn't say a damn thing the whole time. They don't even animate him actually leaving the room. He just walks out of frame, never to be seen again. Based on what I could find about the development of Origins, WB Montreal received the Arkham codebase from Rocksteady in July 2011, then the creative director began work on the project that October. So, the crew only started to flesh out the story specifics during the time Arkham City released to the public. It's impossible to know at what point they decided to include Calendar Man, whether it was something they thought would be fun based on their own enjoyment of the character, or if they saw fan reaction to him and decided later in development to throw him in that gas chamber as a tasty bone for fans to munch on. Either way, it's clear WB Montreal was aware of the character, but didn't feel the desire to incorporate him into their prequel beyond this. Arkham Origins development was notoriously short, releasing a little over 2 years after the project began. So it's hard to be absolutely furious that an Easter egg character in the game they were borderline ripping off only made a quick cameo. However, that doesn't mean we can't be annoying Monday morning quarterbacks about the whole thing. Hell, that might as well be the name of this channel. The simple reason some aggressive nitpicking feels justified is this. Arkham Origins takes place on the eve of the biggest holiday of the year, and the game chooses to set Calendar Man free at the very start. How is he not at least part of the most wanted side missions? Sure, he's not one of the assassins going after Batman, but so what? He's a notorious supervillain with a holiday gimmick set loose on the city after a jailbreak that resulted in the murder of the police commissioner. His escape should have been a much bigger deal, rather than an unspoken annoyance to be picked up at a later date. Pun intended. Which is why I'm inclined to believe the decision to include him came later in development. Although, the developers did have enough time to plant an Easter egg in Blackgate. You can find his cell with his upcoming holiday plans, which are all references to his stories from Arkham City, implying that all those stories happen in 1 year, which I really don't like. But I'm getting lost in the sauce. My point is, there's no way this bald boy would be able to resist committing some kind of Christmas crime to celebrate his newfound freedom. Batman didn't have to capture him that night, although some side mission would have been glorious, nor did he even have to directly interact with him. Some open-world Easter egg with clues about his activities that night would have been an absolute layup. Yet, the game goes for neither option. Then, the fact that the Cold Cold Heart DLC also takes place on a major holiday drives me nuts. Yes, the DLC is focused on Mr. Freeze and involves some penguin shenanigans, but come on. How many times are we gonna have an Arkham-level event take place on a major holiday, but not deal with the Calendar Man? 3 times, actually. Only after the introduction of Calendar Man does the franchise decide to set its games exclusively on major holidays. Origins takes place on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, sucking up the 2 fat ones right away. Then Arkham Knight climaxes on Halloween, the best holiday ever created by man. With Arkham Knight, Calendar Man was back in the hands of Rocksteady, the team that introduced this new iteration to the world. The people who made him the hunky pop sensation sweeping the nation. We waited with bated breath for 4 years to see what they would do next. His in-depth Easter egg in their prior game hinted at an obsession with Batman, going so far to say he'd be there at Batman's end before his mysterious escape. Surely, the studio had a plan to bring him back, and it turns out they did. And they didn't really. Despite not being present in the entire game, after activating the Nightfall Protocol, we finally see him. Here he comes! Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god! Wait, did you catch that? Oh, there he is. Just chilling amongst the people. A dude who looks the way he does, a known serial killer, out in the open with his stupid month head. But hey, he said he'd be at Batman's end, and prophecies cannot be changed. Right, Azrael? I can't deny that this was a cool Easter egg, but it's such a blink and you miss it moment that I definitely needed to have it pointed out to me before I even registered his presence. Other than a secret hideout you can find with October 31st circled on a cartoonishly large calendar, this is as far as his inclusion goes. Why? There were 4 years between City and Night. This was the same team that first introduced the character. The next game takes place on the holiday, which shares its name with the story Calendar Man was best known for. If there was ever a moment in the franchise to give Calendar Man some main stage spotlight, this was it. So, what the fuck? Why did Calendar Man stick around, only to keep popping up in smaller and smaller Easter eggs as the series went on? It's easy to be reminded of how Hush was handled, and the ultimate disappointment that was to many fans. Despite Hush appearing in one less game than Calendar Man, he at least got some payoff to his storyline from Arkham City. It wasn't the culmination of everyone's wildest fever dreams, but it was at least something. Calendar Man, on the other hand, Arkham Knight builds the best case that he was ultimately wasted potential. Even if Rocksteady wanted to stick to his be there at the end promise, it's hard to see how a larger role in the last night of the Batman's existence would have conflicted with that. Considering original characters like Fire Chief Underhill and characters introduced into the franchise by another studio like Firefly got their own dedicated storylines, it isn't hard to think up a dozen ideas for a Halloween-themed Calendar Man side mission. It could have ranged from the mildly goofy to the severely deranged. He didn't need to be part of Scarecrow's scheme, although I'd imagine he would have been a better ally than the loose cannon Riddler or borderline anti-hero Poison Ivy. He could have just been out and about, executing a plan solo dolo. But the team clearly didn't want to use him that way, so screaming into the void and complaining won't get us anywhere. What a surprise. Which means the real question we keep coming back to is why? After the effort put into building this character up, why didn't Rocksteady ultimately want to use Calendar Man? It's not a question that's easy to speculate about, but we may be able to piece together at least part of the answer. There is one core element that connects Arkham Calendar Man with the most acclaimed interpretations of the character. He's always locked up. He's always behind bars. The Long Halloween reinvented him as a blatant Hannibal Lecter ripoff, teasing the Dark Knight from his cell. Of course, that's also the case in Arkham City, but even in the Rebirth era of comics, he's typically depicted as a prisoner. One of the few stories that heavily features Calendar Man is part of a bizarre villain-themed holiday anthology where he initiates a riot in Arkham on New Year's Eve. Another story has him begin in his Arkham cell before being looped into some Mr. Mixelpitalik scheme. The orange Arkham jumpsuit has replaced his glorious calendar cape as his trademark supervillain outfit. It's even what he wears in his one live-action appearance. In that way, the Arkham interpretation fits right in. Calendar Man is no longer a character who commits holiday-themed crimes. That's more like his backstory. That's what he used to do. Now, he's the perpetual convict, the wacky D-list supervillain with a history of well-established crimes who gets to be creepy and cunning from the safety of a cell. Even in Arkham Origins, before most of Batman's core rogues gallery was established, Calendar Man is already infamous and on death row. Now, is this characterization a conscious decision? Some edict that's been handed down across all of DC media? I honestly don't think so. With all the chaos Warner Bros. Has gone through over the last decade, it's clear they can't keep anything in check within clear-cut franchises, let alone across their entire media empire. It seems we are just in an age where the modern writer finds Calendar Man works best in his Hannibal Lecter role. It has served him well. After all, sitting behind bars, telling us about his exploits rather than seeing them for ourselves, is how I fell in love with the character. In fact, I can't think of a single time in my life I've seen Calendar Man actually commit a holiday-themed crime, which leads to one conclusion. The reason that we don't actually see Calendar Man on Halloween and in the last game in the franchise is because actually showing him in action is not where the writers think Calendar Man works best. His criminal activities are of no interest to Rocksteady, so much so that they felt it wasn't worth the fans seeing them even one time. That's an interesting choice. It could have been easy to just throw Calendar Man into the game, give him a holiday-themed side mission, toss everything at the wall, and pray something sticks. But that was never Rocksteady's style. Like the Gargoyle of Gotham they adapted so well, they were always meticulous. I didn't always agree with their story decisions, and I don't necessarily accept that an active Calendar Man cannot be interesting, but I respect that they didn't just go for it without feeling it in their gut. If this is all they felt Calendar Man could be in the Arkham games, a bloated braggart behind bars, so be it. That just leaves my verdict. My oh so holy word. Was Arkham's Calendar Man wasted potential? Yes, but I'm happy with what we got. Could the series have done more with him? Absolutely. It would have been hard to do anything less without excluding him entirely. Would I have personally loved dedicated side missions in Origins and Night? You bet your juicy red baboon butt. Then again, it's because of the Arkham franchise that I was able to discover another strange corner of the Batman universe to love. And for that, I'll always be grateful, and I'll always appreciate Arkham Calendar Man for what he was, even if he never lived up to what I wanted him to be. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts on this date-loving dweebus, and have yourself some happy holidays. Don't get killed.